Well, thank you. Gosh, I like those words, siyakadumisa. That could mean so many things, but it means something about praising God. One of the hymns we sang, I wasn't planning to talk about this, but I want to just tell you why the hymn just before the last hymn and just before this means so much to me. It's the last verse, that soul though all hell should endeavor to shake. Just that line, that soul. That's your soul, mine. That soul, though all hell, think of that, should endeavor to shake. Think that. I'll never, no, never forsake. 3 times. That's a way of thinking about grit. But for me, it's always going to be a way of thinking about a family and the church that I pastored in Irvine for 14 years. They lost all 3 of their children over a period of years. And great folks. And I did 2 of the funerals. And by the way, the church in Irvine that I pastored was a young church. And so in the 14 years I was there, I never buried, so to speak, a person who died of old age. The deaths were always children. There weren't a lot, but it doesn't take a lot to just sort of mark you. And this family was just decimated. Over a 3-year period, Jenny, Katie, and Mike had died. So at the last of the funerals, the mom, and I told her I'd always, whenever I had a chance, I would always just tell this story at least once a year because, you know, the great fear, I think, of parents who lose their children is that people will forget they ever were. So this is my pledge to the Harts, Mike and Sarah. And it's a good one. This hymn, you know, I was asking her, what should we sing at Katie's funeral? And she really wanted us to sing, I am a C, I'm a CH, I'm a CHRISTI. She liked that. And but then she said she wanted to sing this one, How Firm a Foundation. And I thought, well, okay. Any particular reason? I mean, did Katie really like this one? She said, well, she didn't know it, but I like it because the last line, God says 3 times, I will never, no, never forsake. Jenny, Katie, Mike. So, yeah, it's sad, but it's so much about what this life is about and what I hope you'll see the connection to in this morning's message. This morning I want to talk about just 2 sentences from the book of Esther in the Bible. And there's a world of meaning and theology in both of these sentences. And taken together, they cover a lot, including those funerals. The Jewish people are threatened with genocide. Nothing new. But it's not in Europe in the 1940s, it's in Persia, centuries before Christ. And there are 3 main characters in this desperate story. 2 Jews residing in the city of Susa in Persia, Mordecai, his cousin Esther, who has recently become the wife of the Persian king Xerxes. Now, she got there by winning a bride for Xerxes' competition. What an idiot. Not her, but Xerxes. And the 3rd character is a monster of a man, Haman. He's a Hitler prototype. He is scheming to wipe out the entire Jewish nation. And the beautiful Esther appears to be the best chance they have for survival. Maybe she can influence her husband to head off the massacre. The conversation begins with Mordecai reminding Esther of the strategic place she plays in these desperate times, having won the bride for Xerxes' competition. He says, who knows? If perhaps you were made queen for just such a time as this. I want you to repeat it after me. Who knows? If perhaps you were made queen for just such a time as this. That last phrase is one of the most famous sentences in the Bible. And it's true. It's very true, but it will still be dangerous for Esther. Her husband is a tyrannical fool who doesn't like to be disturbed in the pursuit of pleasure. He might lose his hair-trigger temper and kill her if she doesn't like what he has to say. And his favorite method of killing people, it appears, is to impale them. Don't think about it too long. And she considers a danger. And then she courageously determines to do whatever she can to save her people. And she says, if I must die, I must die. Would you repeat that one too? If I must die, I must die. Two big sentences. Who knows whether you were brought to this time for such a time as this? And if I die, well, I die. Her statement is a classic of courage. It's the kind of thing that inspired the faith in a Latin American evangelist I know. He was down preaching the gospel, I think, in Venezuela, which is a very dangerous place to preach the gospel. I'm not sure it was Venezuela, but he got arrested for preaching. And they threw him in jail, and the magistrate went to his cell and said, now listen, if you preach again, we're going to throw you back in jail. And he responded with a kind of, if I must go to jail, then I will go to jail. He said, well, okay, you bring me back to this jail, I'll preach from my cell. No problem. Well, the jailer was a little frustrated, and he said, now wait, if you preach again and I bring you back to jail, I'll put you in solitary confinement. The evangelist is a wonderfully cheeky evangelist. He said, well, no problem. If you put me in solitary confinement, I will pray and fellowship with my God. If I must go to solitary confinement, then I will go to solitary confinement. Well, the magistrate is furious. He said, if you preach again, I won't put you in jail and I won't put you in solitary confinement. I will shoot you. And the evangelist said, no problem. I'll be with my Lord. If I must be shot, then I must be shot. And the evangelist looked at the man who was standing with him, and he said, well, the jailer looked at the man who was standing with him, and he said, what are we going to do with this guy? And my evangelist friend said, well, you do have a problem. The essence of courage, that's it. If I must die, then I will. I'll do whatever it takes to do the right thing. Courage is firmness of mind. It's the strength of character necessary to face danger, for sure, or difficulty, or pain. Courage is not fearlessness. For if there were no need to be courageous, there would be no fear. Courageous people are not fearless. They overcome their fear for the sake of something more important than the fear, something of surpassing goodness. Patrick Reardon says the difference between the courageous and the cowardly is the difference between those who play it safe and those who play for keeps. The cowardly look for the most they can get out of the least investment. They come at life from the standpoint of a strict cost-benefit analysis in the immediate, the here and now. If it feels good, do it. If it doesn't feel good or might not feel good, don't. The brave bet all they have on what's good, even if it feels awful, even if they lose all they have. The brave are in, all the way in. The cowardly are never in. They're always on the edge. hedging their bets, and you must never trust a coward. They'll break your heart. If I die, then I will die. That's what made the words put in the mouth of William Wallace in Braveheart so moving. I'm paraphrasing them, but everybody dies. I mean, really. Whether it's old age or heart failure or cancer or a firing squad or beheading. The question is not whether you're going to die. All courage does, it just might influence when you die or the way you die, but there's nothing fundamentally changed by being brave. You just face the music. So, what kind of people say things like that? Like Esther said, if I must die, I must die. Well, there are people who believe what Mordecai believed, that God is in charge of history, that there are no random events, no accidents, that he's working everything out in accordance with the pleasure of his will. People who say, who knows if perhaps you were made queen, or you were brought here, or you were given this, or whatever it is, for just such a time as this. And the Bible is filled with people like Mordecai. But wait. There's a problem here. God is not mentioned once in the book of Esther. Not once. He's the most important character, but his name is not spoken. And what are we to make of that? Well, the genius of the book of Esther is that though threatened with genocide, the Jews seem to be, with all the tragedy that's plagued the Jewish people, they nevertheless seem to be the luckiest people on earth when the story's over. Now, Esther. How lucky for them that Esther was such a gorgeous woman. How fortunate that she beat the other women out in the Bride for Xerxes competition. How lucky for them that Mordecai just happened to overhear Haman's assassination plot and his genocide plot. Coincidence, one after another, collect in the book of Esther, one after another, and lo, the evil Haman ends up, if you've read the story, go read it, it's fun, he ends up being impaled. They're so lucky. But maybe the Jews are just a little too lucky, like the suspicious character that keeps beating the house in roulette. Maybe there's some manipulation of the game going on somewhere. There's a wonderful line by singer-songwriter David Wilcox. He said, maybe there's a choreography in these coincidences. And that's the point of a story in which the main character, God, isn't mentioned. It's the way he seems to carry out so much of his governance of the world, incognito, choreographing coincidences, working quietly behind the scenes. The author of Esther, whoever this person is, tells us a great God story, and he doesn't say his name. Doesn't say his name. Because God's preferred method of dealing with us, I believe, is to give us a very brilliant, unforgettable portrait of himself in Jesus Christ. On the cross, raised and ascended to the right hand of the Father. And then much of the rest of our time is spent trusting that he's at work, even when we can't really point out just how he's at work. Do you know the name Julian of Norwich? Her times were as bloody and as sordid as any in human history. From 1337 to 1453, England and France were locked in this so-called 100 Years' War. It was a catastrophe that racked medieval society from top to bottom. The bubonic plague struck twice, cutting the population of Europe by a third to as much as a half. Just about a third or a half of all of Europe was wiped out by war and by pestilence. And this woman, and we don't know her baptismal name. She just was called Julian of Norwich, the place where her monastery was. And she served the poor. And she is remembered for what she calls her revelations of divine love. She had a vision over a period of days of God's love. Now again, this is in a century of 100 years of war, a century where the bubonic plague wipes out most of the population. And she has she calls them showings. She sees the love of God, and she meditates on them for another 20 years before she writes them down. If you've not read her, find something. I'm going to give you a few of the things she wrote. Now, again, if anyone else said this, we'd say, you're crazy. Your head's stuck in the sand. But her head wasn't stuck in the sand. She saw incredible evil. She experienced incredible loss. And yet, she could write things like this. When judgment is given, and we are brought up above, then we shall see clearly the secrets now hidden from us. In that day, not one of us will want to say, Lord, if it had been done this way, it would have been well done. Well, she knew what Paul said in Romans 8:28, that God works for the good of all and in all things for those who love him and are called according to his purpose. But she goes on to say, we will one day say with one voice, Lord, blessed may you be, for it is so, and it is well. And now we see truly that all things were done as it was ordained before anything was made. Again, this is not a woman who had not seen evil. She read her Bible, but God graced her and graces us with what she saw. Indeed, as she said famously, all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. So we are enfolded in the Father, and we are enfolded in the Son, and we are enfolded in the Holy Spirit, and the Father is enfolded in us, and the Son is enfolded in us, and the Holy Spirit is enfolded in us. All mightiness, all wisdom, all goodness, one God, one Lord. May God be praised. God is in charge of history. There are no random events, no accidents. He is working everything out in accordance with the pleasure of his will. Do you believe that? And what difference does it make believing that? It's the difference between being fearful and being courageous. Yeah. See, only those who can say, I don't get it, but I'm here, and I'm here now, and I'm experiencing this now, and God promises to turn to my good. Whatever scares me. You can be courageous when you believe that. Yeah. Now, there are some people who are just kind of courageous. They're kind of crazy. I played football with a couple of guys like this. They would throw themselves on barbed wire if it thought they'd win the game, But most of us need some better reason than just to kind of just go run into something like a tank. And it's this. I've met mousy people. I've met people who were socially awkward, people who were afraid to stand up in front of a group, people who were afraid even to greet a stranger. I mean, people who were naturally very, very sensitive and yet be incredibly courageous because they believed that God works in all things for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. And strangely taught us in this one strange book included in the canon, the story of Esther. You can be courageous if you believe that, even dangerous. Edwin McManus tells a great story about his little boy had gone off to summer camp. Came back from summer camp, and it was a church camp, and I guess the kid was a junior higher or something like that, and they were talking about demons all week at summer camp. Heck, I don't like to talk about demons now. I'm old, but I mean, this little boy was hearing about demons. Of course, you're kind of excited. He got back, and his first night back from summer camp, he asked his daddy if he would leave the light on all night. Edmund said, why? He said, well, I'm afraid of demons. Where'd you get that? So I was at summer camp. We talked about demons all week. And And McManus is a pastor, and he thought, I can't tell him there's no such thing because there is a such thing. So what can I do? Do I keep the light on every night until he forgets that there's these demons, these scary, awful things that could plague you and maybe destroy you or whatever? And he thought, wait. He said, look, why don't I pray for you? And he says, please pray, Dad. I like that a lot. And please pray that I'll be protected. And McManus was a very wise man. He said to his little boy, he said, no, I'm not going to pray that you be protected. I'm going to pray that you become dangerous. The little boy thought about that for a minute. He said, well, okay, Dad, but please pray that I get real dangerous. Now, the point of this, and if you've not witnessed this kind of thing as I have, maybe it won't speak to you, but I've seen people, again, people who were weak and who were not considered very important. I've seen them stand up and get knocked down, physically or emotionally, and get up again, and get knocked down, and get up again, and get knocked down, and get up again. And they do it so much that the people knocking them down just can't keep knocking them down. And they're people who believe that if I must die, I will die, but I will not give in to this evil. I will not. Those people are dangerous. So, you need courage. You need courage to pray. You need courage to get up and leave this place and do whatever you have to do today. You need courage to deal with your emotions. You need courage to deal with rejection. You need courage to face a life that you're not sure how it's going to turn out. You need courage to do this. And the only way you get that courage is by believing that God will turn to your good whatever adversity comes your way. Like Esther. That makes me courageous. And sometimes looking back helps me be that way. That's the value of living a few years. And I love to tell this story. I'm going to close with it. Just a conversation I had with God one night that has encouraged me to stay courageous. Driving home from someplace, it was dark, and I was listening to the radio, so it's been a while back, before we had things like, Spotify, and you could play whatever you want to hear. And so sometimes, you listen to a DJ, and you get the luck of the draw. Whoever this guy is, or this woman who's doing the, picking out the songs, just picks out stuff, just is kind of channeling into your emotional life. And this particular night, the DJ picked one song after another that I loved my senior year in college. And you know how music does this, just brings back memories and emotions and people you were with. And I was right, it was dark, and I was singing along with it, and I was thinking, wow, that was a great year. Great year. I mean, the guys I played ball with, the people I lived with, the professors I had, it was an incredible year, 1966. And then I remembered how miserable I was in 1966. Girl I dated for 5 years. Dated and broke up with 2 times. Decided to get married. She decided not. Decided once again to get married. She decided not. Some of you know the story. I was so flattened by this loss. And then my roommate started dating her, and then I got in a fist fight with him. And then, I did. And so all this stuff, all these things that I remembered, I thought, I've been listening to music, and it's making me so courageous, so glad for what God has done in my life. And I remember, gosh, I wasn't happy a bit in those days. Then I said, shoot. And this is a dialogue I'm having with God. I said, God, I wish I could go back to 66. And live differently. Live courageously. Face it. And not despair. And God said, well, you can't do that. I said, I know. But then he said, what you can do is live the rest of your life knowing that it's going to be okay. And I've been trying to do that ever since. It's hard. It's hard to stand up. It's hard to get up out of bed when you don't want to get out of bed. It's hard. Only one thing will get you out of bed. Only one thing will keep you going is if you're able to say, I am here right now in this place and in this time because God brought me here. And he will not abandon me. So, I'm going to do what it takes. People who believe that, well, people who believe that defy categories. They amaze you, and they amaze themselves. So the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you. The Lord remember you. The Lord remind you of his faithfulness, both today and forever. Amen.